Wonderful. Well, I am Rebecca Warriner with AR Workshop Cypress, and I am super excited to be a part of the home and outdoor living shows. We are thrilled that we're able to get these virtually. It would have been awesome to do this in person and be able to have my team walking around the room helping everyone, but we're going to make the best of it and do our project at home together. So if you have purchased your show to go DIY kit, then go ahead and open that box and get your things out. I am sure you already opened it and tore right into it like it was Christmas. I know I would be. If you haven't bought a kit and you're just coming across this recording, you can still order a kit from now through the end of October. This video will be available on the Home and Outdoor Living Show through October 4th. So you can purchase those kits at arworkshop.com/cypress. There's an option to buy a DIY to go kit. And when you get to that section, you'll see a link for the home and outdoor living shows. So click that link. And now, because we are already live and doing these shows, you have the option to also come pick it up at the workshop. So if you would like to add shipping, we can package it up, send it to your house. Otherwise, you can come by our workshop. We're located at the west side of Cypress, Texas, and we can help you get that while you're in the workshop. So let me get started. The things that you have in your kit, you should have, most importantly, a block. Most of the blocks are going to be stained a nice gray color. This is our stone stain, probably our most popular stain in the workshop. You will have a stencil. The stencil we're going to include initially will be the bloom stencil. We do have some other options available. So you might see a stencil that is But First Coffee. If you haven't ordered your kit yet, you can select, you can actually just tell us in the comments, oh, I want the But First Coffee stencil, and we'll include that. We have one that is Texas grown blue bonnets. And then we have one here that is actually let me get this one ready here. A Texas home. I didn't peel this one in advance because there are some parts to this stencil. I like to use all the parts of the stencil. And actually this is one that we're going to do tomorrow, the Texas home stencil. So you have those as your choices. Today, we're going to do the bloom stencil. We are not going to make it look exactly like this. I've got some different colors selected. I picked some tones that are blues. When you purchase your show to go kit, you might have slightly different colors, but you'll have 3 colors plus a white. You should also have some sponges. The sponges are going to be our applicators for the paint. You should have, as far as other tools, a set of gloves if you want to keep your hands clean. In my world, messy hands are happy hands. So I'm just going to put my gloves over there. Sandpaper if you want to add a little bit of extra distressing, which I will do at the very end. You've got sandpaper. And then there is something in your packet, in your box, that's called primer. I'll tell you when to use this. It's a glue-based product that we're going to use to seal the edges of our stencil to make sure the paint doesn't bleed. And a brush. The brush is for the primer. So I'm going to set these aside right now, and we're going to focus on our stencil and our wood. Now, as I mentioned, the wood has already been stained. It's also already been sanded initially, but if you feel any spots on that wood that need a little bit of extra love to get them more smooth, you can sand it. You've got your sandpaper. You're always going to want to sand following the grain of the wood. If that's a foreign phrase to you, whichever way the lines are going, that's the way your sandpaper is going to go. So the lines on my wood are going this way. That means my sandpaper is going to go this way. So I will go ahead and give it just one more little pass to make sure it's nice and smooth. Stencils will stick better to smooth wood. Brush that off. You want to make sure it's nice and clean. If you want to add some extra distressing at the end, I will sand my whole project. You can sand across the edges. Just gives it a little bit more of a rustic look. You can see where some of that stain has been removed around the edges. Your stencil has already been weeded. That means when it comes off of my machine, these are hard to see. They're just cut lines. People ask me all the time, do you use a Cricut? It's like an industrial small vehicle sized Cricut. But so it's a similar concept. We are using a cutting machine with the vinyl, and we do the first hardest part for you, taking out the design, and we put transfer tape over it. So the start we're going to start with is peeling your stencil. The way you peel your stencil in the AR workshop world, place your stencil face down on the table. You're going to peel up one corner of the white backing, but you want to leave the blue down. So the blue is still stuck to this tape. Rather than pulling off the backing, I'm going to use more of a pushing motion. So I'm going to press down hard on this, and I'm going to push it back in small bits at a time. Now, what I'm looking for are parts of the blue stencil that might be sticking right here. If I see any blue showing here, and let me see if I can make something stick. Oh, let's see if I'm gonna get a perfect weed here. If I see any blue sticking here, all I would do is roll the paper back, pressing down over the white backing. I don't want to touch too much of the sticky so that it will stick to our wood, and then keep rolling back slowly. This can be a slow process. Don't try to hurry this. Don't yank this and peel it off, because you can tear the stencil paper, and we want to be really careful with this so that our paint ends up looking wonderful because there's no cracks or rips in it. So again, using more of a pushing motion, push the backing off with your stencil face down on the table. Placing your stencil should be simple. The blue is about the same size as your block. So you don't have to worry about, is the design centered on your block? As long as the blue is centered around your block, then you'll be good to go. I'm just gonna go ahead and place mine on here and just feel with my hands, and then I can flip it up and look at the back side. It's a little bit crooked, but you know what? I'm an imperfectionist these days. I think it's straight enough. If you do feel like you need to reposition, until you really press that stencil down, you can lift up and adjust it slightly if needed. Once you have your stencil where you want it, go ahead and start from the middle and press down over the design, working from the middle to the outside. Whenever you're doing work with stencils, with vinyl, you want to start from the middle and work your way to the outside. We're working out the air bubbles because we want a nice, smooth, solid seal without any bumps or lumps in here. Now, when you come into the workshop to make a project with us, you're making big projects like this 24-inch round or that huge plank tray. We're going to use smaller pieces of tape. If you're doing stencil projects at home, if you're stenciling a wall or anything like that, smaller pieces of tape are easier to take off. Big pieces of tape are easy to put on, but they can be a bear to take off. Thankfully, these projects are all small enough that we can use just one piece of tape. So you'll probably get yours with one sheet. This one, we used a smaller little piece over here to make sure these small pieces are stay put. To take the tape off, keeping the blue down, and I'm going to use one hand to hold this here. Again, the same type of motion we used to peel the stencil off the backing, I'm going to use with the tape. I'm going to press down and roll. The pressing down is making sure that that stencil is nice and stuck to the wood and that I'm not removing any parts of the blue. Go very slowly on this step. There are some delicate little spots, the center of this flower, the edges of this petal, and just take your time working this paper off. I like to go diagonal when I'm doing all of these steps. Maybe my brain's just a little crooked and that works better for me. So you'll find some tips and things that you like best after you've done a few projects, but these are what work well for me. So now we've got our stencil transferred on. I've had a lot of customers who come in like, this is such a pretty color. Can I just leave it? No, you cannot. It is a beautiful blue, but no, we don't leave any stencils on any projects. I don't care how much you like that blue. We are going to paint this and make it look amazing. Now there's one product that I didn't include in your kit. If you have a hair dryer or a fan, I'm going to use the fan as I'm going along to help dry things, just to speed the process up just a little bit. When you're following along at home, you can go grab a hair dryer. I'll talk to you for just a few minutes while my next step is drying, and that'll give you time to run and grab a hair dryer or blow on a little bit with your mouth if you need to. So we've got our stencil transferred. Now what we need to do is seal the edges. If you have a stencil on wood and you don't prime the stencil, it's what we call it at AR Workshop, your paint could bleed up underneath the edges. The paint gets suctioned up underneath here, and your paint can just get a little fuzzier, which isn't a problem. It just might mean that your project is going to look a little bit more distressed, a little bit more rustic. And if you're a perfectionist, you might have to do a little bit more touching up. But we like to try to get those things done in advance. So I'm going to use my primer. Your small container should be labeled primer, and you'll use your foam brush. Everyone's foam brushes are brand new, so they should be nice. But after you're done with today, rinse this out, squeeze the water out really good so the primer doesn't dry, and then let it sit and dry, and then you can use it again. Save it for your next project. So this is a good brush. You can use these quite a few times, and we do reuse them all the time in the workshop. The primer is a glue-based product. We're going to sponge and then smooth the primer over the wood surface. This is going to seal up the edges of your stencil. When you think about what's happening, we're just adding a clear layer, like a clear layer of polish on top so that the paint can't get underneath there. That's all we're doing. It's nothing crazy. It's not a super hard step, but you don't want to use too much. What we're going to do is sponge using a pressing motion, very carefully, not wiping yet. And I'm going to do small sections at a time. And then I'm going to flip my brush over. Again, I didn't have very much on there, and I'm going to smooth. The smoothing is simply wiping away any excess primer that you have on here so that it's nice and soft. If your primer is lumpy and bumpy and bubbly, your paint will be lumpy and bumpy. If your primer is nice, thin, and smooth, your paint will be nice and smooth as well. So pressing over the edges wherever the blue meets the wood. And I'm going to go ahead and just do all the parts of the wood, making sure that I have a nice, even, smooth coat of primer. And then I'm wiping so lightly. Again, not a lot of force, not a real vigorous brushing, a very smooth, slow, soft wipe motions so that we can lift off any excess primer. It's a very thin layer. It will dry clear, but you can see the difference. It's easy to tell what you've primed and what you haven't. We're going to do the whole stencil. Now imagine if you had a big project like this tie-dyed 24-inch stripe behind me, you would really be priming all of the parts that are navy blue. You end up with just primer all over the whole stencil, and that's fine. This is not a pretty part of the process. This is just functional, making sure that our paint is going to look amazing. So now we've got our stencil primed. I did not need to prime any of the outside edges because we're not going to be painting any of those edges. One thing you may have noticed on this block, instead of being stained was painted. This was painted using a dry brush technique. While I put my project in front of the fan, let me tell you a little bit about how we did this dry brush technique. Okay, so this is what I have going on. I have my little Ryobi fan. I love our Ryobi tools. You can get them at Home Depot, and I love them because the batteries always fit everything. So my lights, my drills, my nail guns, my fans, everything uses the same battery, and it's really just wonderful for us. So go get yourself a Ryobi tool. Promise, not sponsored by Ryobi. So our block that we did here with a dry brush technique, you can see we sanded a little bit and the wood is natural underneath. This wood was not stained before. We had a white paint. We use Sherwin-Williams paints at our workshop. So if you have a house that is, oh, I don't know, agreeable gray or something like that, then you'll be able to come in and find those colors. This is White Dove, beautiful, beautiful white, creamy white color. And we just used a brush. You could use a sponge brush. You could use a sponge applicator. And before placing your stencil on, you can go through and just really roughly smush this on and then go back while the paint's a little tacky. You could go back with a rag, a cloth, a clean brush, and scrub off parts of the paint to create these areas of extra distressing. You could also wait for it to dry and then go back in with sandpaper. So I am never against sanding projects. I love to do it. It takes the imperfections and makes them perfect. So you can sand to create these same types of effects. If you like this look, then you would do all of the background technique before placing the stencil down. All right, let's check our primer. It's dry. It's that fast. A very, very thin layer of primer will always dry quickly. So now the fun part, the painting. I've picked out some of our more popular blue tones. It seems like these are really hot colors for this season. Right now, we're obviously loving fall. And if you are in the Houston area, then did you pull out your winter coats yesterday? Did you bring out the scarves and the hats and the snow boots? I know my family had on their fall hiking boots and our chunky socks. And this morning, my son got out every hoodie he owned. Oh my goodness. So we are looking forward to this transitional season as we approach fall, leaving late summer. These blues are really nice transitional colors. They can be fun, ocean inspired, air, sky inspired colors in the spring and in the summer. And as you move into fall, they pair nicely with the oranges and the browns and the rusts that you'll see. So a lot of decorations that you see in these colors, there's great reason behind it. I'm going to do a little bit of color blending on here, which I'm really excited to teach you about. I'm going to pull this up and block my face and show you closely here. We've actually got 3 shades of the pink, orange, and red, and then I have 2 shades on the leaves. It's not hard, guys. It's really easy to do color blending. I am going to use the green for my leaves. I'm going to use the 2 blues for my flowers, and then I'm going to use the white with, I don't know, one of these colors for the bloom. So let's just see what we can come up with. Now, looking at our project, sometimes it can be hard to think of where do I start? Well, give your project a face. What's the central focal point of your project going to be? Rather than starting from the outside on something that isn't going to be maybe the main part of it, I'm going to start work on this great big flower because that's the most beautiful thing. When I look at this flower, that's what I notice. Applying the paint using our makeup sponges, I like to hold them from the pointy side and use the flat part as my brush. These are just disposable makeup sponge applicators you can get at Target or Walmart or anywhere. We like to use them because, one, they're extra clean when we're doing camps and things like that. We can throw them away so that we don't have to worry about contaminating as little hands are touching little things. And but they're really great for our to-go kits because they're very light. And when you're done with them, you can cut them. If you've got used just a little bit, then you can cut the sponge off. You can use the rest of it. So you can get a couple of uses out of these as well. You can rinse them out and use them again. They don't take up a lot of space in your house. So let's start with our flower. I think I'm going to do the green around the outside of the flower and more of the blue in the middle. To apply the paint, you've got your paint cup. This is you'll get about a half a cup full of paint. This is enough paint for like 25 of these projects. Save this, save the lids. You can use this with other projects around your house. I'm just tapping the end of my sponge in the cup. I've got a very, very thin amount of paint. You're not going to be swiping as if you normally do regular painting projects. We're not doing small brushing motions. We are going to stick with that tapping motion that we did with the primer. I am just going to tap this right around the edge of my stencil. You can see we've got a very light, thin layer. It's not thick, it's not goopy. There's no globs of paint, and you can repeat that. Keeping your layers thin. It's better to add a few thin layers than one thick gloppy layer. Now, I did go a little bit over into the leaves. It's okay. Paint covers up paint. No big deal there. You know what? I think I will put a little bit of green at the end of these leaves. So just let yourself get inspired. Have fun with this. There is no wrong way. There's no wrong place to put the paint. If you got a kit that has pinks and oranges or purples and blues, have fun with it. Enjoy. And if you have other colors of Sherwin-Williams paint at your house that you want to use, go grab those little containers and do them. I'm going to go in next with my Leisure Blue color. This is a really pretty chambray color that we've been using quite a bit lately. It pairs really nicely with our navy blue. Navy blue is a really hot color. You can see in both of these projects, these round projects behind me here, got a lot of navy happening this season. To go ahead and place this, I'm just gonna sponge right over where I had the green, right in the middle of my flower. Just tapping a little bit in there. I'm gonna tap a little bit on top of my leaves here, and I'm gonna let this blending on the leaves be a little bit chunkier. I'm not gonna worry about having a smooth transition between colors. So I really am just pressing it right on. And then you can go back as much as you need to with your greens and your blues to make sure that all the right colors are in the right places. Now, what I do want to show you on the flower, you can see here it's very chalky, very choppy. There's not really nice smooth transitions. I'm going to do a smoother transition around the flower. The way you can do this, think about when you're trying to mix two things. What colors blend better than dry colors? So while the paint is still a little bit tacky, I am just going to take my green sponge. I'm going to take a part of my green sponge. I'll fold it in half. Again, messy hands are happy hands in my world. And I'm just going to press over wherever these two colors meet, just to soften the edges of the blue. I think I want a little bit more blue right there in the middle. And then fold my sponge up, pressing over where the blue and the green meet to soften that transition. I didn't have any extra paint on that part. So now when I hold it up close, you can see there's much smoother transition between the blue and the green, while this is still a little bit choppier and blockier. That is our surf green and our leisure blue. The other color I have on here to play with is Reflecting Pool. Reflecting Pool is a really pretty, kind of an aqua shade, but it's got a little bit more blue. We use this a lot on projects. It pairs really nicely with both blues and browns. I'm gonna take the Reflecting Pool, and I'm gonna put that in these remaining few leaves over here so that these leaves only have the surf green and the leisure blue, while these leaves have the Reflecting Pool and surf green. Sorry, I'm getting all my colors mixed up. And these leaves will have the leisure blue and surf green. So I'm gonna just press this over, and I'm gonna make this thick because I will come back in with my surf green to touch up. So just gonna give you a little bit of inspiration here. Want these leaves to look a little choppier, not quite so precise. Now, once you think you have it ready and you feel like you've got all of the parts that you need to have covered, go ahead and get your block and check it out close up. We want to make sure you don't see any wood showing through. The parts where people would usually miss are the very, very tips of the leaves and the flowers. So I'm just giving it a good eye here, checking for the points, and it looks like I've got them all. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add for the bloom. I'm going to just do a nice clean white on this, and then I'll go back with my Reflecting Pool, which is this aqua color, and I'll add a little bit of that just around the edges. Tapping just a little bit, very thin layer of paint, smushing over. We often have people ask, how do I know if I have too much paint? Well, when you're doing your project, if you can't see this, let me show you what too much paint looks like. If the paint is dripping off, and if you can see it coming off of your sponge, then that's a sign you have too much paint. When you're doing it on your project, if your paint is thick and goopy and you can't tell what's underneath it, you have too much paint. Go back in when that happens. It's nothing that can't be fixed. Go back in with a brush that doesn't have very much paint and just soak some of it up and move it around through the rest of your project. We like to tell people when they come to the workshop, there is nothing you can do we can't fix. There is always more wood, and there is always more stencil paper. We can fix anything you come up with. So very smooth, very simple, very thin layer. And you can see we actually can still see the word bloom underneath the layer of paint that we've done. Now I want to do a little bit of blending here with the word bloom to bring some of the color from up above down below. Just cleaning up my little tray as we go. I will do our reflecting pool. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit right around the edges of these. I am just taking this and I am just smushing right along the edge of my letters, my word bloom. It's a pretty harsh line right there. I'd like it to be a smooth line. So I'm going to take a part of my sponge that doesn't have much paint on it. And I'm just pressing, again, no paint on here. I'm just pressing to soften that edge. And there's just going to be a little bitty hint of blue along the tops edges of some of these letters. So that's it, guys. That didn't take very long to do. When you're doing stencils in your house, if you have a wall that needs to be stenciled, you can buy stencils at any craft store in any shape, and you can do your stencils. You can use a sponge brush, place your stencil on the wall, prime it, sponge it, move it to the next section, prime it, sponge it. You're going to use these same techniques, small amounts of paint, sponging motion, making sure that it's not thick and goopy. And it can be amazing. We've seen a lot of interesting things that people have done in their homes over the last 6 months. I'm really proud of everyone for accepting and embracing our stay-at-home status and using it as an opportunity to improve your house. As we are opening back up in the world, people are coming back into the workshops and can't wait because they've been staring at the same walls for 6 months. So it is a perfect time to spruce up your decor, bring some fun fall things into your house as we continue to move forward in light of everything that's going on. So I'm going to go ahead. This has been sitting for just a minute or so. I'm going to peel the stencil while it's wet. Have you ever painted a room in your house and put painter's tape around an edge and then let it dry? And then you come back and you peel that painter's tape up and it peels off some of the paint too. That's so disappointing. The same thing would happen if you were going to be working on your stencil here. We want to peel the stencil off while the paint is still wet. That way the paint doesn't have a chance to adhere to the stencil. So what I'm going to do when I'm peeling our stencils off, we want to peel against the grain. Now remember, the grain of the wood are the lines of the wood. So the wood is going this way. Peeling against the grain means we're going to peel across the block. Just loosen the corners. And I'll show you a trick when I'm doing this on smaller projects that I like to do, just to make sure. You can place it on the table and you can peel it straight up. The things you'll want to watch for are making sure that these little parts that are in between the leaves don't fall back down on your nicely painted project. So what I like to do, if it's a small project, you can't do this if it's something big like this tray back here. I actually like to hold it upside down. And if you come to any of our to-go events or come to any community events where we're there, this is how I will do it, over the trash can, because I can make sure that none of these little parts are going back to my block. And as I'm peeling, there are parts of the stencil that are sticking. It's okay. Stencil paper can tear. It's no big deal. It's just paper. It's made to tear. And yours may not come off in one piece. That's okay. If your stencil paper tears, let it tear. I'm going to go ahead and just throw this over here. We don't need that anymore. That is trash. Now, what we end up with is our block, but it's not quite right yet. We still have some middles of the letters. We still have some middles of the flowers. And some of my paint is still a little bit wet. Could you hand me a pick? I forgot, needed to get a safety pin or a toothpick, anything like that that you have that is sharp. We actually use dental scalers. No, they've never been used before. No, you cannot take it home until start picking your teeth. But this is what we use. We have a lot of fun with these guys. We are actually, I want to have a challenge with some dental hygienists to have them come in and see who can do the fastest weeding in the West. So look for that in the spring, and Dental Hygienists Month. Something with a point, a safety pin. Everyone's got a safety pin. So open it up, a paper clip. If you have a thumbtack, anything that has a little point on it, a needle nose tweezers, something like that. What we're going to do is go in here and take out the middles of our O's. Not so much of a digging motion. You're just trying to slide the point in and lift the stencil up. So I'm going to slide right in the middle of my stencil and lift it up and place it down. We've got the middle of that O taken out. Again, sliding under the stencil, lifting up. You don't want to dig down because you don't want to gouge your wood. And then I'll take out the middle of this big flower. And this is one of the things I do like about this design, which is why we've chosen this one for most of the kits. It has just a few little parts that have to be taken out. Okay, so what we end up with here, I'm gonna move my little tray. You can see that blue that we did, that's just a really soft blue. I picked these soft colors because they're very soft, they're muted, they're not going to take away from too much of a decor. The blue in the flowers is very faint, and I'm seeing that my lighting is making that blue hard to see. The flower has just a few little dots. These little dots here are just showing up with that light blue, but we've got a little bit of shading going on here. Not so much as in the leaves. The leaves you can see look a little bit splotchier, and that's the difference. You can do a blocky blending, or you can do a nice smooth blending like we showed you, just to create different levels of texture. So again, if you haven't already ordered your kit and you're coming across this video, then you can still order a kit. They will be available to purchase through the Home and Outdoor Living Show. The link is on there, arworkshop.com/Cypress. You can go down to our DIY to go kits and you can order those. The kit comes with all of these tools, the primer, the brush, the sandpaper, the block, the stencils, everything you need except your fan. I'm going to go ahead and set mine in front of the fan while I talk at you for just a minute, because I want to show you one more thing that I like to do with my projects. You can order those kits. They're $22. If you need it to be shipped, that shipping is a flat fee of $8. That gets it priority mail to you, so it should be to your house within 2 or 3 days if you live in the Houston area. But we are going to do some giveaways, because who doesn't love a giveaway? So everyone who is attending and able to send us your address through the chat, put your email address in the chat window, and we will be doing a drawing at the end of each day from the guests who put their name in the chat for a half-off project. Everyone who purchases a kit, we will do a drawing with everyone who's purchased a kit for yet another half-off project. So when you put your name in the chat, put your address in there when you purchase your kit, you might be the person that wins 2 half-off projects at AR Workshop Cypress. So the last thing I wanted to show you, and I had a few spots where my paint was thick. Oops, that's fine. Sandpaper. If you have any spots that are imperfect, and every project has imperfections, the easiest way to fix those imperfections is with sandpaper. Sandpaper makes the messy things look like they were supposed to be messy. I sand so many of my projects, but you do need to notice one thing on your project. How smooth and crisp are your edges? That's the difference of primer. Again, that primer is a glue-based product. It's something that we just have here in the workshop. If you do, most of your kits at home don't come with primer, and that's not a step that many people include, but we swear by the primer. So because we used the primer, our lines are all very nice and crisp. There's no fuzzy edges. There's no paint that bled up underneath. I'm gonna take my sandpaper and I am just gonna scuff up my flowers a little bit here, just to make it look a little bit more rustic. It's probably not a difference that you're going to be able to see from the camera, but I can definitely see it here. If you like that more farmhousey finish, then sandpaper will be your best friend. So we've got, again, 4 different stencils that we will send you. And we are going to include paint colors just based on the stencil you choose. When you go to order your kit, if you haven't already gotten to do that, you can choose if you would like the bloom stencil. It'll come with a gray block, and we will include, you know, either pinks and oranges or purples and blues or greens for you. We'll just pick, unless you tell us. If you tell me, I'm always happy to try and accommodate. We have the But First coffee stencil. This is the one we're going to be doing tomorrow when we do our session tomorrow. And then we have our Texas Home, or no, this is the one we're doing tomorrow. We're going to do But Coffee on Sunday. So you can join the session again tomorrow or Sunday and see us do those other ones. And then we also have our Texas Grown Bluebonnet design. I used to have one of these. I believe we've sold it. So another fun design, you can do a lot with this, with the color blending, adding the little white dots in there. Makes a really nice accessory to add to your shelf at your house, and just a fun little gift. So I thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, we're so thankful that we're able to get these home and outdoor living shows going. Everyone's got so much work to do because we've been looking at our houses forever, and now it's time to get out there and start making them everything we want them to be. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. We are happy to be the ones to kick it off. I am Rebecca Warriner with AR Workshop Cypress. If you have other questions about what our workshop is and what we do, you can find us online, arworkshop.com/Cypress. We are located at 16718 House and Hall Road in the west side of Cypress, near Black Horse and Bridgeland, kind of in the Fry 290 area. You're always welcome to stop in and visit us just to see a little bit about what we've got going. And you can still order your show to go kits. Again, we're doing another session Saturday and another session Sunday. So we will see you all again. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend.